Hello learners, I'm Mr. Saul, and in today's lesson we're going to be learning all about soil. Now before we get started, we have to know how we can describe or talk about soil so that other scientists and learners know exactly what we're talking about. So when we describe something, as you guys know, we need to use our senses. So to do this, I went out in the garden, into my little garden, and I collected some soil, which you can see here. And you can see how this soil is not just one thing, it's actually made up of lots and lots of little things. So now I have my thing here. Let's describe this soil. So first, my favorite part about soil is the smell. This is a smell. This is a smell that you can't get anywhere else. The smell of soil is very special because it's the only thing that smells really like this. And this is the smell of our home, our planet. All of the life is dependent on soil. So that smell, that very earthy, rich smell, is an incredibly important smell and will always remind you where you came from. I love that. So also, as you can see, my hands are covered in dirt now. So that's where the word dirty comes from, is when things get covered in dirt. So let's see. I know that if I talk about smell, it's rich. And when I say a smell is rich, I mean there's a lot of it. There's much to the smell. It's not a weak smell, it's a strong smell. I also know that it's earthy, which means it smells like earth. And there's a few other things. What can you describe the smell of earth like? Also, let's go ahead and talk about the other senses. What does it look like? Can soil make a sound? Have you ever heard the sound of soil? I don't know, maybe. Let's see. It's smell, it's look, it's sound, it's taste. Now, if you've ever tasted soil, I have, like if it was on a carrot or something when I'm gardening and I'm eating a carrot and I didn't feel like washing it off, or I didn't do a good job washing it off all the way, I've tasted dirt. Basically, it tastes just like it smells. So taste, I don't recommend doing taste, but you know, whatever. And then there is finally the sense of touch. And different soils can feel different when we touch them. This soil is very powdery and dry, but if I was touching a wet soil like mud, it would be very sticky and sloppy and gooey and stuff like that. So let's take a second and see if with your teacher or your class, you can share out some of your descriptions of soil, of different soil that you've seen, felt, smelled, probably not tasted, touched, that kind of thing. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I hope you guys had a great discussion about how you can use your senses to describe soil and all of the different words we can use. Now, let's talk about what soil is made out of. So if you remember from our previous video, we talked about how when rocks get rounded, little pieces of the rocks get knocked off and that leaves a smooth rock behind. Well, what happens to all those little pieces of the rock that get knocked off and carried away in the wind or the water? Well, they end up as the main part of our soil. A lot of our soil is made up of tiny, tiny, tiny little grains of rock, so small that they're like sand. And this allows the soil to have some space in it. Because those little grains of rock don't absorb water, they will let the water drain through the soil so that plants and other things can drink the water that's in there. So in addition, let's write this on here. So what is soil made out of? First, we know it's made of small pieces of rock. Well, another thing that it's made out of, in addition to all these tiny, tiny little pieces of rock, is all the dead plants, all those things that die and then go back into the soil. So if there's grass growing, when that grass dies, its roots and the blades of grass, they fall apart and turn back into the soil. This is what all those little black parts are. It's just dead plant matter. Think about how every fall, all the leaves fall off the trees. And then by the time the next year rolls around, all those leaves are gone. What happened to them? Well, the leaves turn into the soil. As they rot and decompose and fall apart, they go back down into the dirt and help build it up. Hold on, my cat is coming into the picture. Please be patient. Oh. Say hi. All right, get out of here. Okay, so as I was saying, the leaves will turn into soil. And when that mixes in with all the little tiny bits of rock, we get soil that feels kind of gritty and rough. So another thing, I'll write this one in green, small pieces of rock. Also, dead plant stuff. And when I say dead plant stuff, I just mean everything. So like the roots of the plant, the tree bark that falls off the tree, the blades of grass. Have you ever seen a tree that has fallen and that fallen wood is really almost rotten and you can like pull it apart with your hands? That's because that wood is rotting back into soil. So we know that soil is made out of small pieces of rock, dead plant stuff, and there's one more thing that goes into the making of soil. Do you guys remember a couple of lessons ago when we were looking at soil under our microscope and we found that disgusting looking bug that had all the gross hairs and the white body? Well, a lot of animals live in the soil and all the animals live on the soil. When those animals die, their body will also decompose and rot and fall apart. So a big part of soil is dead animal parts. So we'll write that on here too. Dead animal stuff. And when I say stuff, I mean all the parts of the animal. The fur, the bones, the organs, the blood, all of that will get eaten by animals, will get pooped out, will rot, will fall apart, and go down into the soil. So now we know soil is made mainly out of three things. There's the small pieces of rock that all got chipped off of rocks as it was forming these rounded rocks. Then there's all the plants that die and rot and go back into the soil. And finally, there's all the dead animals that when their bodies rot, they go back into the soil. So now you know soil is made up of a mixture of several other things. If you guys want to take a moment to share and talk about any related experience that you have, if you've seen an animal or a tree that was rotten and dying and turning back into soil, this would be the perfect time to share something like that out. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our final question that we're going to look at with soil today is what are some of the different kinds of soil? Because wherever you go in the world, there's going to be soil, unless you go to the ocean, I guess. But even if you do go to the ocean, at the very bottom of the ocean, there is still going to be soil. It'll just be very wet. So anywhere in the world that you go will have some kind of soil, but not all the soil will look the same. For example, if you go to the desert, the soil will be very different than if you go to the rainforest. How do we talk about different kinds of soil? Well, let's look at the three main kinds of soil. First, we have sand. Sand is made up of lots and lots of little tiny broken up pieces of rocks and shells and stuff like that. Let's take a moment and see if we can describe sand. I'll get you started. I know that sometimes sand can feel very hot. So how else can you talk about or describe sand? What color is it? How does it feel if you rub it between your hands? What are some other details you could provide about sand? Next up, silt comes from when a river that has lots of earth and soil and mud in it, a dirty river, washes up a lot of that soil that's floating in the water. What comes down is a very fine, that is to say small, soil that's very light and powdery and dark. Silt is excellent for growing food. A lot of farmers really like silt. So we can say that silt is fine. Remember, fine means it's got a very small pieces. We know that it's kind of brown and it's very soft. Silt is a very soft type of soil. The last type of soil that I want to tell you guys about is called clay. Clay is a very heavy, sticky soil that's usually orange or red, and it sticks to itself and forms a very smooth, squishy mud. Clay is what we use in pottery. So clay is heavy, smooth, also sticky. Now most soil is a combination of all three different types of soil. If I reach into my bucket of soil here, I won't find much clay because there's not really anything that's red or orange in here, but I will find sand and I will find silt. So this is actually pretty good soil. Have you guys ever seen the different kinds of soil? Have you seen red soil that was really heavy and thick? Have you seen a lot of sand around? Have you seen silt soil that is very light and powdery and great for growing plants? I hope you guys had a great time learning about soil, and I will see you guys next time.